What's going on, people? Jacob here, Miami Dolphins Syndicate. We're going to try to do this after every single preseason game. This is our winners and losers of that preseason game, which Miami Dolphins won 20-13, and there was a good mix of both and good mix of reasons for some of our winners and some of our losers. So our first winner, I think without a doubt, the biggest winner taking away from that first game was Jalen Wright. You look at his usage, 10 carries, 55 yards, a touchdown. He looked good. He looked explosive. He looked like what you expected from Jalen Wright coming out of college. His biggest worry was that he doesn't necessarily read the tackles very well, but Miami Dolphins have a very outside run approach to the rushing attack, and that is something that Jalen Wright was excelling at. He was good in space, made plays where there didn't look like there was plays, and then getting into the end zone. I think he cemented himself as the RB3, and you feel pretty good about Jalen Wright going into the season. If Achane were to go down, if Moser were to go down, he looked like he fit very well into this Dolphins offense. Just another guy that has speed that you can rely on out of the backfield. You can see packages where Mostert's in, Achane's in, Wright's in, a combination of multiple of those guys in the same set. Looked good, looked fluid, looked explosive, looked like what the guy that the Miami Dolphins drafted. And then his usage, getting 10 carries compared to who we're going to talk about next with our first loser. I loved what I saw from Jalen Wright. I'm sure he's thrilled getting into the end zone. Looked great for the Dolphins in the first game. So same vein, how I think without a doubt Jalen Wright was the undisputed winner of the first preseason game for the Miami Dolphins. I think the undisputed loser was Jeff Wilson Jr. You look at what he already had coming against him coming into camp to make the team. Look at him last year. Did almost nothing for the team. Was kind of surprised that he made the team in general last year. You look at what he's dealing with this year. You look above the depth chart. You're looking at Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert as 1A, 1B. Flip that as you will. And now Jalen Wright, the Dolphins using a third-round pick on Wright, and he looked great. Just mentioned for the first winner how great Wright was. But then even Chris Brooks was getting more usage and better usage than Jeff Wilson. You look at 12 carries, actually had the most rush attempts on the team, and then 40 yards out of Chris Brooks. Jeff Wilson, 5 carries, 7 yards, 1.4 yards per touch. You're looking at his contract, $800,000 dead cap if the Dolphins do elect to move on from him. There was just nothing that Jeff Wilson provided to this team that somebody else couldn't provide on this team. It was lethargic. It wasn't explosive. It looked like a guy that he's probably run out of juice. He's had a decent NFL career, and I was excited when we brought him over because I remember that year with the 49ers before they got CMC. He was the RB1 for the Niners, somebody that at the time I had in fantasy football, and I was thrilled to bring over Jeff Wilson. And he's been fine. He's had some good games for us, but his time looks like it's all but come to an end as a Miami Dolphin. So second winner for the Miami Dolphins, again, a little bit of a different type of winner here. I don't even know if it's necessarily a win for the team, but certainly a win for him, is Malik Washington. You look at what he did in the receiving game, just 1 catch for 5 yards, and it was always going to be, and it's still always going to be, an uphill battle for Malik Washington to get snaps at the receiver position, to get catches over guys like Tyreek Hill, like Jalen Waddle, to Odell Beckham Jr., try to bring back Eric Esekama, see what he has, Jonas Smith, the running backs in the backfield. It's always going to be a very tough task for him to get really anything more than 15, 20 catches throughout the entire season for Malik Washington. But what he's got to walk away from the first preseason game is he has a cemented role. He is the returner. He was out there for almost every single kick return, punt return for the Miami Dolphins, and showed explosiveness. He's hard to tackle. Somebody who's a little bit shorter in stature, but has some wheels on him. They threw out Willie Snead. They threw out, I think, another guy or two out there for a couple of those punt and kickoff attempts, but it was solely Malik Washington, for the most part, all game long, that had that role. So while he may not be, even a fifth string wide receiver on this team, he will have the ability to get on the field and impress via kickoffs, and there is somebody on this Dolphins team that already knows something about being able to carve yourself a role on special teams, because that's how Tyreek Hill got his start for the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, to get to the level that Tyreek Hill has become, it's going to require a lot of work and a lot of talents. He's got the speed, and he's being given the role as a rookie, as a returner, so as long as he holds that role, he'll probably make the team, because again, that's something that it was up in the air whether he'll make the team in general or not. If he is a returner, he has the ability to impress and show out what he can do, getting some returns And the perfect time to come into the NFL to be a returner with this new return in situation, kickoff situation, where you're pretty much going to see returns almost every single time a team kicks off. So Malik Washington, he has to feel great about making this team, and now he knows what his role is on the team. So loser number 2 is a little bit of a wombo combo, and that's just the Miami Dolphins if Tua gets hurt. Skylar Thompson and Mike White might be the worst quarterback 2 battle currently going on across the NFL. And there's some bad battles. I mean, we got to see the Hall of Fame game, and that was fantastic. That was great quality football. Part of it was just the fact that we got football back, but I think it was actually really good quality between the Texans and the Bears. And you saw decent quarterback play from Davis Mills on one side, Tyson Bagent, Ripien from the Bears. They were good. They were fine, especially for preseason standards. And then you see Skylar White. Then you see Mike White. For Skylar Thompson, 95 yards, 8 of 19. Mike White, 4 of 14, 26 yards. Skylar had a touchdown and an interception. It's not pretty. Behind Tua, it's pretty ugly. And if Tua goes down, I don't know if either of those 2 guys end up with a start. I think the team will find somebody off the street if Tua goes down at some point this year for an extended period of time, similar to what the Browns did last year. They had DTR, they had somebody else in-house that they gave a few starts to and realized very quickly that they did not have it. And then they bring in Joe Flacco, they win games, they make the playoffs. I don't know who that potentially guy out there on the street is. Maybe it is just as simple as trading for Joe Flacco and trying to recreate the magic that the Browns saw last year. But that's obviously a worst-case scenario. Knock on wood that it doesn't happen because the offense looked so vanilla. It's preseason. I get it. That offense looked a shell of a Miami Dolphins offense under Mike McDaniel. You don't have the personnel, you don't have the receivers, you don't have the quarterback, so you cannot run the same system, but it was incredibly bland. There was still some pre-snap movement, but in no way did it look like a Miami Dolphins, Mike McDaniel offense. And even with it being so bland, so vanilla, neither of those 2 guys did much to impress. Skylar Thompson still looks athletic. He has the ability to get outside the pocket. Accuracy is certainly an issue. The 2 of them combined, they had a 45.1 quarterback rating. Like it's pretty ugly from the 2 of them. If Tua ever goes down, I have zero confidence in either Skylar or Mike White to win us many games. Final winner, again, another combination. I'm going to look at the offensive line. I'm going to look at Patrick Paul and Jack Driscoll, 2 guys that are fighting to potentially be a starter for this Miami Dolphins team. Patrick Paul, second-round rookie. Jack Driscoll coming over from the Philadelphia Eagles, where he was a career backup over there on one of the best offensive lines in football. This one a little bit more of a recommendation from Donovan, as he got to watch a little closer than I did. Just came back from vacation. That's why y'all didn't get to see me last week. But Patrick Paul did not allow a single sack, looked pretty poised. He has that size that is just, you cannot teach that size that Patrick Paul has. One of the biggest offensive linemen coming into the NFL this season. Prefers to play outside, but very well could get some reps on the interior of the offensive line, where the Dolphins are certainly weaker and have some positions up for grabs. So I think Patrick Paul played pretty well. Jack Driscoll at center. Center is something that has been a question for the Miami Dolphins the last 2 years. Connor Williams was that guy, and when the ball was already snapped, Connor Williams was one of the best centers in the league, but had some issues getting the ball to Tua, sometimes snapping over his head, wide left, wide right. Jack Driscoll didn't have any bad snaps, looked pretty composed back there. Obviously, we have the issues with Aaron Brewer currently being out, and Liam Eichenberg might end up getting moved to right guard, but he had to come in last year as impromptu center. So Driscoll looked fine, looked good, looked composed, and same thing for Patrick Paul. So 2 questions that are not necessarily answered on the interior offensive line. I don't think those guys are going to end up getting the starts, but they made it a little bit more tough for some guys that might be ahead of them in the depth chart, and that's what we need to see. We need to see some consistency, need some competition, legitimate, real competition in a good way from the interior of the offensive line, because we already know how concerned we are about this interior O-line going into the season. And finally, this one's a bit of a stretch, a bit more broad. I'm just going to go ahead for the rest of the receiving core. I'm just going to say the entire wide receiver core. Malik Washington's a winner in the sense of he's going to get pretty much all the snaps as a returner, but just strictly talking at the wide receiver position, I don't think anybody necessarily showed out, and there are reps, there are positions to be fought for within that receiver room. Eric Ezukanma has his injury, Odell Beckham has his injury, and those aren't even the top guys on the team. So there are potentials for some of these guys that are coming in as fringe practice squad guys, fringe roster guys to make an impression. And they certainly didn't get benefited with the quarterback play they had in front of them. Obviously, Skylar Thompson, Mike White, it wasn't great. But then you look at the list of guys that got out there as receivers. Looking at River Craycraft, you're looking at Kyle McGowan, Kyrick, I mispronounced his name yet again, Malik Washington previously mentioned, Willie Snead, Braylon Sanders, Jaquan Burton, like a whole bunch of guys that if they made the team, it'd be a surprise for them. I don't know if any of those guys realistically are making the team as a receiver at the very least. I don't think you're looking at more than, like I said, with Malik Washington. I'm going to go with just the total of that wide receiver group that was playing the first game. I don't think you're finding 20 catches all season long from anybody who was out there. Tanner Conner had the best game, 3 catches, 70 yards, had a long of a 43-yard completion. Jody Fortson had a catch. After Tanner Conner, and Jeff Wilson, the only player that had more than 2 catches or had more than 1 catch was 2 catches for Kyrick McGowan. Nobody separated themselves. Nobody looked great. The offense, just similar to what I talked about with Mike White and Skylar Thompson. Very vanilla, very simple, very basic. Didn't see anybody really show up. Saw a few drops, and it was not a very inspiring performance from the receiver group. So those are my winners and losers from game number 1 of the preseason for the Miami Dolphins. Let me know your thoughts on the players listed, some other guys that impressed you, some guys that disappointed you. Let us know down below in the comments. We'll see y'all next time. Make sure to like, make sure to sub. Appreciate y'all for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Go Dolphins.